The silence in the penthouse overlooking the perpetually busy financial district of Stamford, Connecticut, was less of a reprieve and more of a suffocating blanket woven from 27 years of emotional neglect. Valerie, 55, moved through the imported Italian kitchen with the practiced, almost mechanical efficiency of a high-end appliance. She was meticulously preparing Robert's morning routine, a ritual dictated by his unwavering belief that precision was the only path to wealth. The coffee machine hissed, heating the single malt blend to exactly 185 degrees, not a single degree higher or lower, because Robert, her husband, the successful hedge fund manager, was a stickler for control. Robert was, in the polite vernacular of their affluent circle, a powerhouse. In the honest assessment of anyone who dared to truly look, he was a textbook narcissist, utterly convinced that his every whim was justified, and his every mistake was someone else's failure. For Valerie, living with him meant walking on eggshells that had long since pulverized into a fine, invisible dust. She had been a vibrant woman once, full of East Coast energy and a sardonic wit. Now she felt like a museum piece, well-preserved, elegantly dressed, and entirely untouchable. Her routine, the charity luncheons, the manicured nails, the obligatory hosting of investors, was her cage. The front door slammed, interrupting the artificial calm. Robert, 58, strode in, already radiating the aggressive entitlement that defined his public persona. He was yelling into his Bluetooth headset about a total washout in Q2 derivatives, and didn't spare Valerie a glance, even as she placed his perfectly regulated coffee and the Wall Street Journal exactly 4 inches from his right hand at the marble counter. "They just don't get it, Ken. They're slow, Ken. I need results, not excuses," Robert barked, pacing the spotless floor. He finally disconnected the call, ripping the headset off his ear and slamming it down next to the paper. Valerie flinched internally. She was used to the noise, but today something felt heavier, stickier in the air. He picked up the cup, tasted it, and grimaced with exaggerated distaste. "Valerie," he said, using her full name. "A bad sign. This is practically tepid. Honestly, can you handle anything correctly anymore?" She swallowed the retort that burned in her throat. "Tepid? It's 185, you psycho." Instead, she offered the practiced, neutral reply. "I'm sorry, Robert. I'll make another." He waved a dismissive hand, silencing her. He didn't want coffee. He wanted conflict. "Forget the coffee," he said, leaning against the counter, his expensive Italian suit impeccable, his eyes hard and cold. "We need to talk. Now. No theatrics, no whining. Just listen." The phrase sent a shiver down her spine. This wasn't the usual critique of her social calendar or her lack of enthusiasm for his new yacht. This felt terminal. "I'm done, Val," he stated, the words clipped and flat, devoid of any genuine emotion. "This is not working for me anymore. The whole arrangement is stale. Frankly, it's embarrassing." Valerie felt a physical dizzy spell. She gripped the edge of the counter to stay upright. 27 years. A lifetime of concessions, compromises, and enduring his relentless emotional abuse, all dismissed with a casual wave of his hand. What are you saying, Robert?" Her voice came out thin and reedy, foreign even to her own ears. He sighed dramatically, as if she were the inconvenience. "God, you always have to make things difficult. I'm talking divorce. I've had the papers drawn up. My lawyers will handle everything, of course." He pushed a thick-sealed manila envelope toward her. It landed with a dull thud next to the cooling coffee. "But here's the kicker," he continued, crossing his arms. "I need you out. Today." The audacity of the demand hit her like a punch to the gut. Today. She lived here. This was her home, her life. Today. "Robert, that's impossible. Where am I supposed to go?" "I don't care," he said, his voice rising in volume, losing the veneer of calm detachment. "Go to that ridiculous sister of yours in Jersey. Go to a hotel. It's irrelevant to me. I need the house clear. You have until 4 p.m. Pack your essentials, take the old Mercedes, and disappear." He looked at his watch, a diamond-encrusted monstrosity. "It's 7:15 a.m. You have plenty of time, and don't even think about making a scene or calling anyone before you're gone. If you cooperate, the settlement will be generous. If you make this difficult, Val, I will make sure you walk away with absolutely nothing. Are we clear?" Valerie stared at the divorce papers. Her world had just exploded, not with a bang, but with the cold, calculated efficiency of a spreadsheet calculation. She felt the metallic taste of panic flooding her mouth. Her legs were trembling uncontrollably, but beneath the panic, a flicker of something she hadn't felt in years ignited. Pure, unadulterated fury. He wasn't just ending the marriage. He was erasing her existence, demanding she vanish like she was a faulty Wi-Fi connection. "Clear," she managed, her voice steadier than she expected. She hated him for forcing her into this weak position, this instant compliance. She wanted to scream, to smash the expensive porcelain, but the ingrained fear of his wrath held her hostage. She turned her back to him, the sight of his smug, entitled face too much to bear. She had to get out of the kitchen, out of his immediate vicinity. She needed to process the sheer brutality of being discarded this way. She started up the sweeping, ornate staircase. Each step was a battle against the rising tide of nausea and despair. She was climbing toward the master suite, the room they shared, yet never truly occupied together, to pack her bags, as ordered. The thought of sorting through 27 years of clothes and memories in a mere few hours was overwhelming. When she reached the landing, the immense master suite yawned before her. It was a palace of muted grays and whites, impersonal and sterile. The scent of Robert's custom cologne, a heady mix of oak moss and ego, was pervasive. She walked straight to the expansive walk-in closet, a room larger than her sister's entire living area. She pulled down a heavy old-fashioned leather duffel bag from the top shelf. It was the bag she had used on their honeymoon trip to Italy, a relic from a time when she mistakenly believed he actually loved her. Valerie started ruthlessly yanking clothes off the hangers, dresses, suits, things she probably wouldn't need but grabbed in a desperate, panicked frenzy. Her eyes kept darting toward the clock. 4 p.m. A deadline. A humiliation. She was shoving a pile of cashmere sweaters into the duffel, ignoring the exquisite organization of the space. Her eyes drifted toward the upper corner of the closet, a narrow, dark alcove above Robert's side of the built-in storage unit, where he kept his lesser-used items, extra shoes, seasonal coats, and a ridiculously large collection of golf trophies that he displayed like the holy grail of masculinity. It was in that shadowed, dusty corner, tucked almost out of sight, behind a stack of pristine, unused Egyptian cotton bath sheets, that she noticed it. It was a small object, perhaps a foot long, wrapped crudely in what looked like heavy brown packaging paper and secured tightly with industrial-grade duct tape. It didn't belong there. Everything in this closet was either designer or highly functional. This was organic, messy, hidden. Robert was obsessed with notness. He would have had a fit if he saw dust, much less a clumsily wrapped package, in his sanctuary. Yet there it was, wedged deep into the corner, almost as if someone had tossed it there in a hurry. Curiosity, a long-dormant instinct, suddenly eclipsed her panic. Why would Robert hide something? And why here, in a spot he rarely accessed? The mandate to pack and disappear faded momentarily. She didn't just need to leave, she needed to know. The cold, logical part of her brain, honed by years of managing Robert's complex social life, told her that if he was acting this aggressively, demanding immediate removal, it wasn't just boredom. There had to be a powerful, urgent reason for this instantaneous ejection. She pulled a step stool over, her hands slightly damp with sweat. She reached into the alcove, her fingers brushing against the abrasive duct tape. The package was surprisingly heavy, solid. It felt dense, like metal or hard wood. She carefully maneuvered it out. The paper covering was thin in places, and as she tilted the package under the closet light, she saw a slight tear near one corner. Through the tear, she glimpsed a dark mahogany finish. It wasn't just a package, it was a box. Robert had always been fanatical about his privacy. He never left important papers lying around, and anything sensitive was locked away in his downtown office safe. To find something so poorly concealed in their master bedroom was completely out of character. She carried the box over to the marble bench near the window, the paper crackling under her grasp. She tried to peel the thick tape, but it resisted. Finally, fueled by a nervous energy she hadn't possessed in years, she grabbed a small pair of nail scissors from her vanity. She carefully cut along the seam of the duct tape, tearing the brown paper away. Beneath the wrapping, revealed in the harsh light of the penthouse, was a beautifully crafted wooden box. A humidor, perhaps, or a decorative jewelry chest. But as she rotated it, her breath hitched. It wasn't a mere storage container. It was a lockbox, secured with a small brass combination dial. Why would Robert need a private lockbox hidden in his own closet? If he had valuables, they were in the safe downtown. Suddenly, the cold, flat brutality of his eviction order made horrible, terrifying sense. Robert wasn't just tired of her. He was actively trying to clear the scene. He needed her gone before she could stumble upon whatever dirty secret he was desperately trying to keep buried. Valerie looked down at the lockbox, the sheer urgency he had displayed. PM, Val, or you get nothing, was a flashing red warning light. He was scrambling. She sat down heavily on the bench, the lockbox resting in her lap. How to open it? She didn't have the combination. Robert wouldn't have used a simple date. His combinations were always complex strings of numbers related to financial figures or obscure company codes. She closed her eyes, trying to recall any number sequence Robert had obsessed over recently. His Q3 losses? His offshore account balance? No, too long. Then a memory flashed. 2 years ago, when his mother had passed away, Robert had been unusually sentimental, talking about the year his family emigrated. It was an anomaly in his otherwise robotic existence. 1968. She held the brass dial, her heart hammering against her ribs so hard she could hear the rhythmic thump-thump in the silence. Her fingers, still slightly shaky, began to move the dial. 1, 9, 6, 8. A soft, almost imperceptible click echoed in the massive, sterile bedroom. Valerie held her breath. She didn't want to know. She really didn't. But the cold defiance that had surfaced when he demanded her departure pushed her hand forward. She lifted the heavy lid. The box was lined with dark velvet. Inside there were no jewels, no cash, and no cigars. Instead there were 3 items, arranged with sickening precision. First, a bundle of papers, tied with a thin red ribbon, the title visible even before she touched them. Valerie and Robert Harding, Post-Nuptial Agreement, 2018. She hadn't signed any post-nuptial agreement since 2005. Second, a collection of photographs. They weren't of her or their family. They were glossy, high-definition professional photos of a woman. Younger, blonde, wearing clothes Valerie recognized instantly as being designer couture Robert insisted on. In several of the photos, the woman was pregnant, very pregnant. In one particularly sickening image, Robert was standing next to her, beaming, his arm draped possessively around her. The third item made the blood freeze in Valerie's veins, pulling the entire devastating truth into sharp focus. It was a small, cream-colored, official-looking document, a birth certificate. Valerie picked it up, her fingers trembling so violently she nearly dropped it. She scanned the document, the elegant script swimming before her eyes. Name, Robert Harding, Jr. Date of birth, January 14th, 2024. Mother, Serena Davies. Father, Robert Harding. January 2024. That was 8 months ago. He hadn't been discarding her because she was stale. He had been discarding her because he had a whole new life, a new wife and a newborn son, born while they were still legally married and living in the same house. The panic, the urgency, the need to get her out by 4 p.m., it was all to clear the decks for his new family to move in. Robert hadn't just been cheating. He had completely fabricated a parallel existence. The rage that had been a tiny flicker moments ago erupted into a white-hot conflagration. It wasn't just betrayal. It was an act of profound, calculated malice. He had replaced her, had a child with another woman, and then, months later, coldly demanded she vanish so his new family could occupy her space. Valerie dropped the documents back into the box. The sound was flat, final. Her trembling stopped. A strange, cold calm washed over her, the kind of focus that arrives when survival is the only option left. She stood up, slowly, her eyes drifting toward the hallway. She could still hear the faint clinking of cutlery downstairs, Robert likely calling his assistant to organize her removal. No, she wouldn't leave. Not now. The realization settled deep in her bones, firm and irreversible. She had packed the wrong bags. She wasn't the one who needed to disappear. He was, and she had all the proof she needed to blow his perfect, narcissistic world to smithereens. The gloves were off, and Val decided right then that Robert Harding was about to meet the woman he had buried 27 years ago. Valerie felt the weight of the mahogany lockbox in her hands, no longer a mysterious object, but a ticking bomb aimed straight at Robert's immaculate facade. The initial shock had morphed into a searing clarity. She wasn't merely wronged, she was facing a comprehensive, years-long operation of deceit. This wasn't just a midlife crisis affair. This was a calculated replacement plan. She gently closed the lid of the box, the soft click sounding deafening in the silence of the bedroom. Her mind, previously fogged by anxiety and years of gaslighting, began to work with a ruthless, almost terrifying speed. Robert wanted her out by 4 o'clock. He wanted the house sanitized for his new life. That was his weakness. His timeline was her opportunity. She had to pivot, and she had to pivot fast. Panic was an indulgence she could no longer afford. The first step was concealment. She carefully rewrapped the lockbox in the crumpled brown paper and shoved it deep into the large designer handbag she rarely used, a discreet, heavy leather tote. She hid the bag in the bottom of the empty duffel bag she was supposed to be packing. If Robert came up, he needed to see the performance of a defeated wife packing her scraps, not the meticulous planning of an enraged adversary. She rushed back to the closet, grabbing random pieces of clothing, expensive, beautiful things, and tossing them haphazardly into the duffel. She needed noise, movement, the illusion of compliance. Downstairs, Robert was still on the phone, his voice echoing up the stairwell. "Yes, she's packing now. It's handled. I told you she's pathetic. She won't fight." Hearing those words, "She's pathetic, she won't fight," steeled her resolve. He had underestimated her because he had spent 27 years systematically dismantling her self-worth. Valerie pulled out her phone. Her fingers hesitated over her sister's number. Evelyn, the one Robert hated, because she saw right through him. No, Evelyn would advise running, escaping, not fighting a war against a man with unlimited resources. Valerie needed a tactical advantage, not emotional support. She scrolled until she found the contact. Thomas Sterling, Robert's ex-partner. They had parted ways 5 years ago in a spectacular, vicious corporate legal battle that Robert had barely won, mostly by burying Thomas in litigation fees. Thomas hated Robert with a visceral passion. He was the perfect, albeit risky, ally. She stepped into the adjoining bathroom, turning on the water to muffle her voice, and called Thomas. "Valerie?" Thomas sounded surprised. "Wow. Haven't heard from you since that painful Christmas party back in 19. What's up?" Valerie kept her voice low and steady, projecting a calm she didn't feel. "Thomas, I need your help. Robert just served me with divorce papers. He wants me gone by 4 p.m. today." A whistle came through the receiver. "That smooth son of a bitch jumping the gun, is he? Why the rush?" "That's what I found out. He has a second life, Thomas. A new woman, a baby born 8 months ago, and a post-nup from 2018 I never signed." Valerie recited the facts clinically, avoiding the emotional horror. Thomas was silent for a long moment. When he spoke again, his voice was tight with malice. The arrogance, unbelievable even for him. He wants to make sure the baby is legally protected before he files, doesn't he? He's trying to establish a domicile outside of this marriage and limit your claim to half the assets before the real filing. Exactly. I need to buy time, Thomas, and I need to verify that post-nup. Could he fake my signature? Absolutely. He's a monster, Val. Look, I want nothing more than to see that bastard fall. Tell me what you need. I need you to confirm that divorce lawyers in this state can halt an immediate eviction if there's evidence of marital fraud and concealed assets, specifically a child from an affair. I also need to find out where he stashed his vulnerable assets right now. You know his shell companies better than anyone. This is big league stuff, Val. You don't want a standard divorce lawyer. You want a shark. I know exactly who to call. Give me 30 minutes. Do not leave that house. Do not sign anything. Do not let him provoke you. 30 minutes? Thank you, Thomas. This means everything. She hung up, heart pounding. She had initiated the counterattack. Now came the hard part, surviving the next few hours under Robert's predatory gaze. Valerie returned to the closet, her focus entirely on her breathing. She needed to act the part of the distraught, defeated wife. She grabbed a tissue and rubbed some eyeshadow beneath her eyes to create the impression of crying. She pulled the duffel bag downstairs, intentionally dragging it noisily, letting it bump against the polished wood. Robert was sitting exactly where she had left him, now reading the journal, sipping a fresh cup of coffee, made, she realized, with a fresh wave of nausea, by the housekeeper, who must have arrived while Valerie was upstairs. He didn't look up immediately. "Making progress, Valerie. Good." She dropped the bag dramatically near the entrance. "I can't do this, Robert. This is insane. 27 years and you're giving me 4 hours. It's inhumane." This was a calculated move. She needed to look emotionally volatile, irrational. He finally lowered the paper, his expression a mixture of boredom and condescension. "Inhumane. Stop being dramatic, Val. You'll be fine. You're getting a substantial settlement. Just go. The sooner you leave, the sooner this messy business is over." "Why the rush, Robert?" she pressed, injecting a slight tremor into her voice. "What is so urgent that I can't stay for one more night?" He smirked, a cruel, cold expression that made her skin crawl. "Let's just say I have a pressing appointment that requires privacy and a cleared space. Don't worry about it. Just pack the rest of your trinkets and go." Valerie allowed a few genuine tears to escape, tears of pure, consuming rage. "Are you bringing her here, Robert? Is that it? The trashy blonde with the baby?" The immediate effect was devastating. Robert's mask shattered. His eyes narrowed into slits, and the color drained from his face. He slammed the newspaper onto the counter, the sound echoing through the foyer. "You know what? I don't know what garbage you're talking about, but you better watch your mouth, Val. You want to see ugly? Keep pushing, I told you. If you cooperate, you get the generous offer. Stop making baseless accusations and just comply." His denial, so quick and ferocious, confirmed everything. He was scared. He didn't know how much she knew, or where the proof was. He was just trying to manage the threat. "I signed a post-nup in 2005, not 2018, she stated, her voice trembling slightly, but firm enough to register the challenge. Robert laughed, a short, sharp, terrifying sound. "Oh, Val, you were so drunk that night at the Hamptons party, you probably don't remember signing it. It's fully executed and notarized. My legal team is thorough. Don't flatter yourself that you have any leverage here." He was lying, but the confidence with which he delivered the lie was chilling. If she challenged the post-nup now, he would be instantly alerted. She had to back off. Valerie let her shoulders slump in defeat, selling the act. Fine, Robert, I'll go. I just need to call Evelyn and ask her to arrange an overnight stay." She turned and walked toward the living room, grabbing a small crystal vase on the way, pretending to admire it. "And don't even think about taking that vase," Robert snapped from the kitchen. "It's Ming. It stays." She nodded meekly, placing it back, making sure he thought she was focusing on trivial items. She sat down on the leather sofa, pulling her phone out, and pretending to text Evelyn. In reality, she was waiting for Thomas. 5 minutes later, her phone vibrated. From Thomas Sterling. Called the Shark. "She's named Eliza Hayes. A butcher. Exactly what you need. She said this is textbook high-stakes divorce fraud. She's filing an immediate emergency injunction based on concealed assets and spousal abandonment duress. Crucial. She needs proof of the child and the fake post-nup immediately. Her advice: do not leave the premises. Take photos of everything in that box. Tell Robert you're delaying. Make an excuse. Don't mention her or me." Valerie took a deep, centering breath. Eliza Hayes. A butcher. Good. She needed a butcher. The most dangerous part was yet to come. Getting pictures of the evidence without Robert realizing. She walked back upstairs, carrying her phone. She was gambling that Robert, confident in his dismissal of her, wouldn't follow her up. Back in the master closet, she quickly retrieved the lockbox from the hidden duffel. She opened it, the weight of the documents almost physical. She worked fast, her hands steady now. She placed the post-nuptial agreement on the marble bench, flattening it carefully. Click. Photo taken. She focused on the signatures, zooming in. Click. Next, the photos of the pregnant blonde, Serena Davies. She took 3 close-ups, focusing on Robert's beaming, proprietary expression. This was irrefutable proof of the affair and parallel life. Click, click, click. Finally, the birth certificate of Robert Harding, Jr. She photographed the date, the parents' names, the registrar's seal. Click. She quickly packaged everything back into the lockbox, returned it to its hiding place in the duffel, and placed the duffel back in the closet, slightly more organized this time. The whole operation took less than 3 minutes. She paused, wiping the sweat from her palms. The sheer panic had subsided, replaced by the grim satisfaction of an operative who had just secured the objective. She went back downstairs, her face carefully composed into a mask of resignation, though her eyes now held a dangerous, barely contained fire. Robert was still in the kitchen, checking his portfolio on his tablet. "Robert," Valerie said, her voice now calm, authoritative, a tone she hadn't used with him in years. He looked up, annoyed by the interruption. "I've made some calls," she continued. "I need more time. My sister is out of town until tomorrow night. I need at least until Friday morning to secure temporary accommodations." Robert bristled. "No, that wasn't the deal. 4 o'clock, Valerie. That's the deadline. I have commitments." "I understand you have commitments," she said, taking a step closer, adopting a chillingly level tone. "But I have nowhere to go today. I'm a resident here, Robert. I need 24 hours' notice. Otherwise, I will be forced to involve the police for unlawful eviction, and that, I promise you, will impact your commitments far more than a simple delay." She watched his reaction. He was trying to calculate the risk, bringing the police into his pristine world. That was a threat. "Don't be ridiculous, Val. Police? You're being hysterical. Try me," she returned, meeting his gaze directly. "Call security. Try to force me out. And I promise you, every newspaper in this city will know the name Robert Harding and the word domestic abuse by the time your precious meeting starts." The threat was effective because it targeted his Achilles heel, his reputation. He couldn't risk the scandal, not with a new secret baby dependent on his clean image. He leaned back, his eyes flashing with frustrated hatred. "Fine, fine, you manipulative shrew. Midnight. You leave tonight, no later. And if anything goes missing from this house, I'll sue you into oblivion." "Midnight," Valerie conceded, a slight smile playing on her lips. She had bought her time. She knew that by midnight, the injunction would be filed. She wouldn't be leaving at all. She walked into the living room, feeling the immediate surge of adrenaline fading, replaced by profound exhaustion. She had just verbally sparred with Robert Harding and won a small, critical skirmish. She needed to transmit the photos to Eliza Hayes immediately. She went to her study, a small neglected room that Robert rarely entered, and sent the evidence via a secure, encrypted connection Thomas had sent her to Eliza Hayes. "Evidence attached. Please confirm receipt and file the injunction ASAP. He has set a deadline of midnight." Within 2 minutes, the reply came. From Eliza Hayes. "Received. This is solid. Emergency filing initiated. Stay put. You are the legal resident. He attempts to remove you. Call the police and cite the pending injunction and evidence of fraud. Good job, Mrs. Harding. The fight begins now." Valerie sat down in the dusty leather armchair in her study. She felt a wave of cold triumph wash over her. She was no longer Valerie, the pathetic, defeated wife. She was Valerie, the combatant, but the relief was quickly tempered by the cold fear of the impending chaos. Robert was not a man who accepted defeat, especially not at the hands of someone he deemed pathetic. When he realized she hadn't just delayed, but had weaponized his secret, the confrontation would be explosive. She had walked directly into the eye of the storm, and she knew, with terrifying certainty, that before midnight, the true chaos would erupt. The silence in the penthouse was just the prelude to a very loud, very ugly ending. The hours between noon and midnight stretched into an agonizing eternity for Valerie. She remained locked in her study, ostensibly preparing for her departure, but in reality she was monitoring the silence from downstairs, waiting for the legal hammer to fall. Robert, believing he had bought himself a few crucial extra hours of control, had retreated into his downtown office for his commitments, which Valerie now understood meant finalizing the paperwork to protect his assets from her. Valerie knew she had committed a critical error in revealing her knowledge of the post-nup. It had confirmed to Robert that she was looking for loopholes, but her swift, cold threat about the police had successfully masked the extent of her evidence. She had shown her teeth, but hadn't delivered the bite yet. At 6:30 p.m., the atmosphere in the penthouse shifted. The front door didn't slam. It was opened with careful, deliberate force. Robert returned, not alone, but with 2 men in expensive, ill-fitting suits. Valerie recognized them immediately. They were security detail, the kind of heavy-set, silent professionals Robert used for sensitive transactions. He was escalating. Valerie crept to the edge of the staircase landing, peering down. Robert was speaking in hushed, urgent tones to the men. She couldn't make out the words, but the intent was clear. The security detail was here to ensure her midnight departure was non-negotiable, and likely physically enforced if necessary. She retreated to her study, feeling a fresh wave of primal fear. Robert was playing dirty, immediately relying on intimidation. At 7:00 p.m., her phone rang. It was Eliza Hayes. "Mrs. Harding?" The lawyer's voice was brisk and businesslike, cutting through Valerie's anxiety. "The emergency injunction is filed. The court has granted a temporary restraining order, specifically prohibiting Robert Harding from disposing of significant assets, and critically for you, from removing you from the marital residence before a hearing can be held." Valerie gripped the phone, her knuckles white. "Thank God. What do I do now?" "You wait for him to make the first move. The papers are served electronically to his legal team. They will inform him. He will know very soon that you've outmaneuvered him. When he confronts you, and he will, you simply state that you are the legal resident and will not be leaving." "He brought security guards home," Valerie whispered, her eyes darting toward the closed study door. Eliza's response was sharp. "That's intimidation. If those men touch you, Mrs. Harding, call the police immediately. You have a court order protecting your occupancy. He is in contempt if he tries to force you out." Valerie hung up, feeling the court order like an invisible suit of armor. She was still terrified, but she was no longer alone. She waited. The silence was deafening, the kind of quiet that precedes a storm. At 7:45 p.m., the silence broke. The study door didn't open. It was shoved inward with a brutal wooden thwack that rattled the picture frames on the wall. Robert stood in the doorway, his face a mask of white-hot fury Valerie had only glimpsed in extreme business situations. His eyes were wild, red-rimmed, and radiating pure malice. He wasn't just angry. He was incandescent with the shock of having his control stripped away. "What the hell did you do?" he spat, his voice low, shaking with suppressed rage. Valerie rose slowly from the armchair, placing her hands calmly on the back of the chair. She did not flinch. She looked him straight in the eyes. "I called a lawyer, Robert, a good one, Eliza Hayes." The name struck him like a physical blow. He staggered slightly, the color draining further from his face. Eliza Hayes was known as the Annihilator in the world of high-stakes divorce. "You called Thomas Sterling, didn't you? That snake. You went behind my back and involved that scumbag. I contacted the person who could help me understand why you were so desperate to get me out of this house by 4 p.m. Valerie corrected, her voice steady. "And now I understand perfectly. You have a court order, Robert. I'm not leaving. Not at midnight. Not ever. Until the court decides." He took 2 predatory steps into the room, his security detail looming silently in the hallway behind him. "You pathetic idiot. You think you can blackmail me? You think a temporary court order means anything against what I can do to you? I will crush you, Val. I will ruin you financially, socially, completely. You'll be living on the street with your ridiculous sister. It's not blackmail, Robert. It's the law," Valerie stated calmly. "And if you want to know what this pathetic idiot knows, let me enlighten you." She walked to her safe, which Robert rarely paid attention to, and retrieved a large, professionally printed photograph she had developed at a local pharmacy immediately after the phone call with Thomas. She held it up. It was a perfect, clear image of the birth certificate. Robert Harding, Jr., born January 2024. Robert froze. His jaw tightened, and a low, guttural sound of pure animalistic desperation escaped his throat. The injunction wasn't based on suspicion, Robert. It was based on evidence. Evidence of a concealed child, a fraudulent post-nuptial agreement, and significant marital fraud. Your new life is no longer a secret, and you can thank your incredibly messy hiding place for that. He lunged forward, not toward her, but toward the photograph. He snatched it, crumpling the paper violently in his fist. "You had no right. That is private. That is my son," he roared, spitting the words out. "He is your illegitimate son, born while you were married to me." Valerie shot back, taking another step away, ensuring distance. "And I have copies of that, and copies of the photos of Serena Davies, your pregnant girlfriend, and copies of the 2018 post-nup I never signed." The realization hit him. He had lost. His perfect, controlled world was dissolving. The urgency to remove her had been solely to protect his secrets, and now those secrets were weaponized against him. His posture collapsed slightly, replaced by a chilling, calculated menace. He pointed a trembling finger at her. "You signed that post-nup, Valerie," he hissed, the volume dropping back to a dangerous, deadly whisper. "It was fully notarized. The notary will confirm it. You were drunk. You don't remember." Valerie felt a sharp, cold jab of realization. Her biggest mistake hadn't been trusting him. It had been her years of allowing herself to be numbed by alcohol to survive his marriage. He had exploited her coping mechanism, fabricating the signature during a time she was most vulnerable. "My lawyer is already investigating the notary, Robert. Fraud is a criminal offense." He laughed again, a harsh, humorless sound. "Try it, Val. You have nothing. I have a clean history. You have a history of public intoxication. Who do you think the judge will believe?" This was the core of his narcissism, the unwavering belief that his performance of perfection was impenetrable. He truly believed he could talk his way out of a birth certificate. "It doesn't matter who the judge believes about the notary right now," Valerie said, walking past him to the study door, intentionally moving into the view of the security guards. "What matters is that you are married, and you have a new child, and I have proof of both. That gives me leverage to half of everything you've ever hidden, including the assets Thomas Sterling warned me about." She had played her final card. Mentioning Thomas, his oldest nemesis, and the concealed assets sent him over the edge. Robert let out a howl of frustration and charged, his hands outstretched. "You ruined me, you manipulative witch!" The security detail, alerted by the sudden, uncontrolled violence, moved instantly, blocking Robert before he could reach Valerie. "Sir, calm down," one of the guards said, grabbing Robert's arms. Robert struggled violently against the professional restraints, his eyes fixed on Valerie, burning with pure hatred. "Get your hands off me. I will destroy her. She is costing me everything." Valerie didn't run. She stood tall in the doorway, watching the spectacle of the powerful Robert Harding reduced to a raging, contained animal by his own hired muscle. "You're not destroying me, Robert," she said, her voice clear and strong. "You destroyed yourself when you decided to replace me and hide a whole family. I'm just exposing the truth." She then did the only thing left to assert her dominion. She looked pointedly at the guards. "Please remove my husband from the premises. He is in violation of a standing court order." The guards exchanged a glance. They were hired to protect Robert's interests, and escalating a domestic dispute into a police matter that violated a court order was not in their contract. They released Robert, who stumbled back, breathing heavily. "He is not to touch me or attempt to remove me again," Valerie informed the guards. "If he does, you will be considered accomplices to assault and contempt of court. Your decision. The guards looked at Robert, who was hyperventilating, completely defeated by the sudden shift in power. "We need to leave, Mr. Harding," the lead guard stated firmly, taking Robert's arm. "This is no longer a matter of security. It's a legal issue. We are terminating service until this is resolved." Robert glared at Valerie one last time, his face contorted in a silent vow of vengeance, before allowing himself to be led out of the study, out of the penthouse, and out of her life. The slam of the front door was the sound of a closing chapter. Valerie waited until she heard the distinct click of the deadbolt engaging. She had locked him out. She walked slowly back to the study, her legs shaking uncontrollably now that the adrenaline was gone. She sank into the armchair, burying her face in her hands. The fight had been brutal, terrifying, and utterly necessary. She had survived. She hadn't run. Over the next few months, the battle raged. Robert threw everything he had at her: accusations of mental instability, attempts to invalidate the injunction, and a smear campaign in his close social circles. But Eliza Hayes, the butcher, was relentless. The evidence of the birth certificate and the highly suspicious 2018 post-nup, combined with the fact that Robert had forcibly tried to remove her from the home, painted a clear picture of a man attempting to defraud his wife. The final verdict was delivered 10 months later. Robert was found guilty of marital misconduct and fraud. The fake post-nuptial agreement was nullified. Valerie walked away, not with the meager settlement Robert had offered, but with a controlling share of the marital assets, including the penthouse and a substantial portion of his investment firm, forcing him into a costly restructuring. Valerie sold the Stamford penthouse and moved into a beautiful old brownstone in Greenwich, closer to her sister. She used the settlement funds to start a foundation dedicated to empowering women who are victims of financial and emotional abuse in high-net-worth marriages. As for Robert, his reputation was permanently tarnished. He was forced to resign from his executive position, his career severely crippled by the public shame and the legal costs. He was last seen in Florida, attempting to restart a low-profile firm, living with Serena Davies and his son, forever paranoid about the other secrets that might still be buried. Valerie, now 56, sat on her new porch swing, sipping a cup of coffee that was exactly the temperature she preferred. She looked out at the late afternoon sun filtering through the ancient oaks. She had not only survived Robert Harding, but she had dismantled him, piece by agonizing piece. The scar of the 27 years was deep, but it was fading. The woman who had packed her bags that morning was gone. In her place was Valerie Harding, a woman who had finally learned that the most dangerous weapon in any war against a narcissist isn't money or power. It's the truth, strategically deployed. And she smiled, a genuine, unburdened smile, knowing that her biggest discovery wasn't the lockbox itself, but the strength she found inside herself when she finally chose to fight. She was home,